Thank you, Administrator. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, the Congress, good to see you, Mr. Administrator. Thanks for being here. Recently, the Congress voted on a bipartisan basis to overturn the WOTUS rule put forward by the Biden administration. Also, then shortly thereafter, a judge issued a preliminary injunction that affects 24 states, including my state of North Dakota, staying the new rule. So, given that Sackett versus EPA is in front of the Supreme Court and it's likely to provide clarity as to what EPA's authority is over states and landowners in regard to regulating the waters of the U.S., doesn't it make sense to put a nationwide pause on your WOTUS rule until the Supreme Court has ruled in the Sackett case?
Where we see in those 26 or so states that the courts
24.
have weighed in, there is an active stay, and we will be implementing WOTUS under the 2015 regime, where the states that don't have a stay in place will continue to move forward. We do believe that, number one, I engage significantly with our agricultural industry, and I appreciate you. And
well, and you've been out to our state, and you've seen our concerns about the WOTUS rule.
Yes, I have. And what we attempted to do was take those concerns, match them with the laws that we're required to follow, and we codified a number of exclusions and exemptions that we were really proud of that many of the ag community asked us to do. Unfortunately, in the states where that stay is in place, and we go back to 2015, those exemptions and exclusions are not as clear and available to our farming community, but we'll continue to work around that. I think the Sackett case will provide some clarity in all of the questions that we have. The good news is we won't be starting from scratch. We'll be starting with a rule that we put in place that some states have stayed. We'll take the Sackett case, we'll adjust the rule, and we'll be able to move forward, and we won't be starting from 2 years behind. I want to just say that the previous administration's WOTUS rule was vacated, and so we felt compelled to move forward and engage with our agricultural community to try to put a durable rule in place that will provide some certainty and codify many of these exclusions and exemptions that we attempted to move forward with.
The current rule doesn't do that, and you recognize and acknowledge that the Congress on a bipartisan basis voted against the rule. You do acknowledge that?
I acknowledge that for 3 or 4 administrations, multiple courts have weighed in. The Supreme Court has weighed in. No one has ever been pleased with WOTUS, and I recognize that. I will say that we did our level best to learn from all of what we've seen in the past to put forward a durable rule, and we find ourselves where we are.
Sackett should provide some clarity, but we're very concerned about protecting private property rights. I also want to ask you about the MATS rule. Actually, the existing EPA regulatory rule, and then your own study indicates that the rule you have in place prior to issuing this new MATS rule has the mercury emissions below levels of concern, has reduced it to below levels of concern from a public health standpoint. That's your own study determination. So why are you proposing new rules that put additional burdens and costs on electric plants when we very much need that electricity?
I think when we took a look at the necessary aspect of that rule, we came to the conclusion that there needed to be further reductions of mercury to protect human health. And we also took a look at, and I believe that many of the power sector industry would agree, that the control technologies that exist to control mercury to the levels that we'd like to see to protect public health exist in a very cost-effective way. Many of them already have various aspects of those technologies on their plants. And so we believe that in following the law and following the science in a cost-effective way, we could continue to drive mercury emissions down to protect public health.
Well, the whole point is your own study shows that we're already doing that, and now you're adding additional regulation and cost to a coal-fired electric industry that is working mightily to capture and store CO2, which you know we're doing in our state. That new technology, so whether it's been SOx, NOx, mercury, and now CO2, the industry is undertaking investment to capture those emissions and address them, and now with CO2, which is very, very expensive. So you're adding regulatory burden at a time when they are investing and working mightily to provide baseload electricity to the grid, which is very much needed, and capture CO2 as well. And you need to keep that in mind. Here, I'm going to give you another example and ask you to respond to it. You now are looking at lignite coal and subbituminous coal and trying to apply the exact same standards to both when they're very different. And so we need you to work with our industry to make these investments to capture the very emissions that you want to see, like CO2, that you want to see captured and stored. You've got to work with the industry if you want that to happen.
You're absolutely right in terms of having to work with the industry, which, I think we're doing a fairly good job of that. And I think many of the examples that you cited, North Dakota is doing a good job in pursuing some of those advanced technologies like CCS and other technologies. And so I think you and I are singing from a similar sheet of music, which is these technologies that are already being deployed in many of our states do have a lot of co-benefits which prove we can drive some of this pollution down. We've got some in the industry that are lagging behind and not performing as well as some of the utilities in your state. We'd like for them to pursue some of these cost-effective technologies like CCS, advanced mercury scrubbing technologies to ensure that the industry is keeping pace at a unified level.
We're already capturing millions of tons of CO2, but we need help and regulatory certainty in order to keep doing that and do more of it.
And that's why we've worked really hard, and this is something that I've spoken with the industry about at length for the last year and a half, 2 years. This is why we're putting all of our rules out together. The industry has asked for these to be bundled so that they can look at all of the impacts, the potential co-benefits from investing in technologies, and make those longer-term investments. And what this EPA has done and pledged is that we would put these rules out together, and that's what we have done.